The British Grand Prix rarely disappoints, and today was no exception, with Lando Norris winning his first ever race in Silverstone. And of course, we cannot forget Nico Hülkenberg's first ever podium in F1. But I would say the talking point of the entire race has to be, of course, Oscar Piastri's 10-second time penalty for the safety car infringement that he had with Max Verstappen. Without that, it is quite certain he would have gone on to win this race. So the question comes to this is, was he actually deserving of that 10-second time penalty? And with precedents set earlier in the season, specifically here I am talking about Canada, between George Russell and Max Verstappen, was it a just and fair result in terms of a penalty? And really, I want to start and discuss today's incident. It was a fairly late safety car in call from the FIA to the drivers on the second DRS zone on the lap. And it gave Oscar Piastri, obviously the de facto leader in terms of him governing the pace and when he wishes to start. But the big issue, of course, comes from the apparent sudden break he did. And of course, in such a difficult condition, which we had here, with it being a damp track, I think that is a secondary aspect to think about with regards to him doing what he did. I think these mitigating or these circumstances that you have to take into consideration really played a part in the FIA deciding to give him a 10-second time penalty. And as we could see from both onboards of the drivers, it was a fairly slam dunk. Verstappen, with a bit of spray behind him, he would not have seen what Piastri was doing. And of course, Piastri was very late on the brakes, completely shutting down his McLaren car and coming literally to a halt on the track. Something you really should not be doing, particularly in a condition that we saw the track in, a damp track. Huge amounts of spray to the drivers behind. That is a certain accident waiting to happen, but thankfully it did not. Now, let's talk about the precedent set at the Canadian Grand Prix a little earlier in the season, because it plays a lot of relevance to the actual penalty decision that the stewards made today. Now, in that incident, it was a dry track, and we saw George Russell slamming on the brakes with Max Verstappen, again the driver behind. Now, for that, the stewards decided and deemed, with looking at the incident overall and of course having the telemetry, that they thought Russell did not go over kind of the deemed level of braking that would have given him a penalty, and that was set at 30 psi. So I believe, with that being the precedence set in 2025, the stewards then saying, this is the pressure you went at in terms of your brake, and we don't think that is sufficient enough to warrant a penalty. It is quite clear that today's incident was well and truly above that 30 psi measurement that they have regarding whether to give a penalty or not. And in fact, Oscar Piastri, is just been revealed, had a brake pressure of 60 psi, double that of the precedent set in Canada, and this equates to 100 miles per hour drop in speed. So you can see he was well and truly above the bar set. So I think when we take into consideration the actual situation of the race at hand within that particular moment today, alongside of what the stewards did previously in Canada with the same situation basically unfolding on the dry track, the stewards deemed it a quite, I suppose, dangerous situation is a way you could kind of word it. It could quite easily have had a different outcome, with Max Verstappen driving straight into the back, as we saw happen on multiple occasions today between Kimi Antonelli and Isaac Hadjar. The spray that was coming off of these ground effect error cars because of the Venturi tunnels left them completely blind to what was happening in front. And even with the rain light at the back of the cars, that still did not allow these drivers to see where the car was. Hence why you saw a lot of drivers going off the racing line on the straights or into the corners to be able to actually have a lot more visibility for themselves. So I think it was a just and fair cop basically for Piastri. Now, of course, the McLaren team were at the time thinking about disputing the fact of this penalty, but as we saw, they served the 10-second time penalty and Lando Norris went on to win the race. So that will not be anything that comes from it. The team decided with the telemetry they had, yes, Piastri was at fault for that, and I think from the way in which Zach Brown really didn't ferociously, I suppose, defend Piastri while on the pit radio with the Sky F1 crew really kind of sums up what the feelings were internally within McLaren at the time. So of course that is what happened, and we saw how it all ended up. This gave Lando Norris the victory as Piastri had to pit and stay stationary for 10 seconds in the pit stop, and this allowed Norris to gap Piastri as a result and consequence of that. And of course we also had the moment where Piastri went off. Another situation from which maybe even without the penalty, Piastri could have lost the race at that moment in time, regardless of the fact of it. But anyway, that is what was going on with regards to the Verstappen-Piastri incident and why it was a just and fair cop in terms of getting a penalty from that particular incident. And of course this allowed Lando Norris to close that championship lead Piastri currently has over him heading into the summer break. So of course it's a nice reset for Norris. It puts him in a good headspace heading into the break, and of course we have a whole second half of the year to go where anything can happen for the Drivers' Championship, and probably will. We will have loads of twists and turns. How it all plays out, of course, is anyone's guess, as none of us have a crystal ball to look into the future. And I'm going to wrap the video up here. I hope everyone that's watched has enjoyed it. If you have, do leave a like on the video. And if you're new here on F1 Unraveled and have enjoyed this breakdown of why Piastri got the penalty and the deserved nature of it, hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications for future content, right? I will catch you all later.